Ladies and gentlemen, sports fans alike, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago. One of the couple, two, three best podcasts around. So sit back, grab yourself a cold one and a Polish sausage, park your keister in the French room, and listen to Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago.
In Chicago, you know that all sports rock. The Bears, Hawks, Bulls, Cubs, and Sox. Pick your favorite, you can choose. As long as the Packers lose. For everything you need to know, it's Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago. Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago. This is your host, Sean. On this episode, we have the Bulls getting younger by getting older, the Cubs just free-falling, White Sox turning things around, and WTF Blackhawks. All this and more on this episode of Bill Swerski's Sports Talk Chicago. But first, as always, we'd like to thank our sponsor, the Rockford Ice Hogs. If you're not familiar with the Rockford Ice Hogs, they're the AHL minor league affiliate of the Chicago Blackhawks. What does this mean for you? It means you get to see the stars of tomorrow today for a family-friendly, affordable price. And you get to visit the lovely BMO Harris Bank Center, which I truly believe is the best stadium in all of AHL. And tickets start under $10. So get to take all your kids and your family to a game and not go broke. Only 90 minutes from the city limits. Check them out at icehogs.com. Tell them Swerski Sports sent you. Honestly, I think I'm going to start off Bulls. I'm going to start off with the Bulls, move to the Blackhawks, and I'm going to go to the Cubs, then end up on the White Sox. So if you guys are those that like to fast forward through the show to the sports or team you like, that's going to be the order of things. Bulls, Blackhawks, Cubs, and White Sox. You know what? Check that. There's a Bears note that I had a couple of people send me messages saying, WTF, you didn't talk about this big important Bears note from last week. And you know what? I wrote it down to talk about, and I completely forgot. It makes me a turd. So we'll start with Bears, then we'll go to Bulls, Blackhawks, Cubs, and on the White Sox. So make sure you check that out. If you are new to this show, thank you so much for checking us out. This is the Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago podcast, and we are a by the fans, for the fans show. What does that mean? That means unlike a lot of the sports radio shows you listen to on the radio, who absolutely hate their fans and would love to make fun of them and talk poorly about them, we respect everybody here. There's been plenty of times where you've completely disagreed with me and I've discussed your points on the air. But there are also times when you've agreed with me, and I've talked about that as well. And if you ever want to come on the show to discuss your opinion, you're more than welcome to. And if you send any of your questions or comments in, we'll make sure to talk about those as well. Because we don't hate our fans here. So I'm going to dive right in. And the Bears topic that I got rightfully called out on was I didn't talk about the passing of former Bears defensive coordinator Buddy Ryan. If you lived in Chicago during the mid-'80s, you know all about Buddy Ryan. If you're a Bears fan, you know about Buddy Ryan. If you are a fan of another Chicago sports team and you're not a fan of the Bears, maybe you live elsewhere, Buddy Ryan is the dad of Rob and Rex Ryan, who are currently the Buffalo Bills head coach and defensive coordinator. They've been in the league for a long time. Their dad was Buddy Ryan. Buddy Ryan was the Bears defensive coordinator for the 1985 Super Bowl team. Buddy was an odd situation. Typically, when you bring in a new head coach, the new head coach cleans house and brings in their own staff to help win. And when Mike Ditka was hired by George Halas to be the head coach of the Chicago Bears, he inherited Buddy Ryan. And he had to keep Buddy Ryan. Mike and Buddy didn't get along. Mike and Buddy did not get along at all. Buddy Ryan, it was almost like it was two different teams. Mike Ditka ran the special teams and the offense, and Buddy Ryan ran the defense. The two didn't like each other, and when they would have practices, the defense would go after the offense like it was the Super Bowl. That's how hard they went. And the offense had to respond because otherwise they would have just gotten beat up. It was not like there was, oh well, it's Jim McMahon or it's Walter Payton. Take it easy on those guys. They went after him, and that was the thing with Buddy. Buddy was not a nice man. Buddy was not a personable guy, but Buddy Ryan was a hell of a defensive coordinator, and you can hear players like Mike Singletary talk about how much they thought Buddy Ryan hated their guts until they realized that Buddy actually loved them. And he was just not going to take it easy on them and make them work hard every single day to earn everything. And he put players in the spots to do the best they could. And if you were not his kind of guy, you were out the door. Buddy Ryan was a huge reason that the Chicago Bears won the Super Bowl in 1985. And he was the last defensive coordinator to be carried off the field after a Super Bowl. Buddy passed a couple weeks ago, and although he left to become the head coach of the Eagles after the Super Bowl, he is a huge part of the Chicago Bears history. He's a huge part of Chicago sports folklore and legend. And I just want to take a moment of silence and say, rest in peace, Buddy. You were a crazy, ornery old bastard, but you are our crazy, ornery old bastard. So, I would like to move on to the Chicago Bulls. Now, we talked about the Rajon Rondo signing last week, and I gave you my thoughts that, honestly, I don't think it's a bad signing. I really don't. My big concern, though, is I've been thinking about it. I've had whole another week to think about it and ponder it. But the only thing that concerns me is talent-wise, Rajon Rondo is great, and he is an assist machine, and he's going to get players like Jimmy Butler and Mirotic and McDermott. He's going to get those guys involved in the offense, and they better be ready to shoot because Rondo's going to feed the ball to him. And look at all the assists he got in Sacramento, who's a bad team. The Bulls are still not a good team, but they're better than Sacramento. Imagine what they'll do there. So I honestly think talent-wise, he's going to be great. My big concern is that how is Fred Hoiberg going to handle Rajon Rondo? I mean, they couldn't handle him in Boston. They couldn't handle him in Texas. He was only in Sacramento for a year, and they were just a bad team going nowhere anyway. Is he matured enough to be like, you know what, hey, if I don't do well here, my time in the league might be up, and I'm going to do right by this team, this team that just signed me? Or is he going to just be a turd and make life hell on everybody and make it for a long season? That's the big concern, because the talent is there. Rajon Rondo has the talent, but it's going to be, can Fred Hoiberg control him? He's come out and said the right things so far, and that's always good, before the season starts. But once the season starts, we see, were those just words, or is that actual actions? I mean, he said things like he's worked with Hoiberg and watched film with him, and they're on the same page, and that this is Jimmy's team, and he's just here to help, and blah, blah, blah. But Rose said those things, and Gasol said those things, and everybody said those things, and it sounded like prior to last season that this was going to be a really good team. coach coming in, a versatile team with some veteran experience and some young guys, that are all offensive players, that they weren't the right fit with Tibbs, and that just blew up in our faces. So I'm just cautiously optimistic. If Rajon Rondo performs like he did in Sacramento, this is going to be a better team than it was last year. And then the Bulls went out and made two curious moves. The first one was trading Judd Buechler. Whoops. They traded Mike Dunleavy to the Cleveland Cavaliers. And it was basically they just handed him over for nothing to get rid of the cap room. But they traded Dunleavy and the draft rights to Vladimir Veraminko, who was Washington's 48th overall selection in 2006, to the Cavaliers for the draft rights to Albert Morales, who was Toronto's 39th overall pick in 2004. I don't know any of those other players. I just know Dunleavy. So basically they are giving Dunleavy and a guy nobody ever heard of for another guy that got drafted 12 years ago that's never going to play here. So basically they just handed over Dunleavy to the Lakers to clear some cap room. And then they also traded Jose Calderon to the Lakers. So they traded Calderon and Denver, along with Denver's 2018 second-round pick and their own 2019 second-round pick, to the Lakers for the draft rights to Atar Majok, who was still the Lakers' second-round pick in 2011. And he plays overseas right now. So basically they just gave Calderon away and his salary. But the curious part about that is, I guess they just did it for the cap space because they gave away cap room and got nothing in return. So they just gave away money to get off the books. Is they signed Dwayne Wade. The prodigal son has returned. The pride of Robbins, Illinois, Dwayne Wade. Former Marquette superstar, multi-time NBA champion, 102 years old, Dwayne Wade. Don't get me wrong. Dwayne Wade is a fantastic player. He's going to be in the Hall of Fame. He's the key that won multiple NBA titles. First in the Shaq era in the Heat, and the second with the LeBron era in the Heat. But they paid a lot of money for him. He's old. And the thing is Gar Pax came out and told us that the key for the Chicago Bulls team was to get younger and to get more athletic. Dwayne Wade is old. Definitely not getting younger. There's very, very few ways that they could have gotten older than Dwayne Wade. And he's not as athletic as he used to be. So you really did two things that you said you weren't going to do. So I'm not sure exactly what the Bulls' goal was. Is what does Dwayne Wade have left? How's he going to work with Rajon Rondo and Jimmy Butler? And I just don't know what the roadmap for this team was. I honestly think if you look at the Bears, and under Ryan Pace as the general manager, what you've seen, and you've seen this, is he tells you exactly what he plans to do, is sign low-cost veterans. If they're going to sign free agents, it's going to be guys that are either coming into their prime or are already in their prime, not players that are past their prime that you're paying a premium for what they did in the past. You're paying guys for what they can do now, and to optimize the number of draft picks, because to get the most number of players to see who hits. And that's exactly what he's done in 2 years here. Gar Pax, they say one thing, do another thing, and then say a different thing, then do a different thing than that. It's like they have no idea what it is they're doing. It's really frustrating. But don't worry. They said that they're going to be held accountable to each other for their own actions. Nobody was held accountable this year. But next year, trust them, they will hold each other accountable. So I just don't know. It's not that I hate the Dwayne Wade signing. It's just that it doesn't fit any pattern. He's old. I don't like him just because of what he's done against the Bulls, and he represents the Bulls not being able to win a title because he really was the driving factor of those Big Three era Miami Heat. It's just frustrating, and as a fan, I guess I don't know what else to expect because there's really. Let's take a step back, and the NBA is a weird league, and the way it's set up, and the way the salary cap works, and the way free agency works, etc. It's so geared, and it's such a superstar league. I mean, you play 5 players on the court at once, so you have a couple of superstars, and you're going to be in the driver's seat. But it's so geared to making the rich richer and the poor poorer. There's like 3 teams in the league that can compete next year. Golden State, Cleveland, I'm sure San Antonio will still be up there. But really it's just those 3. Maybe it depends on what Oklahoma City does now that they lost Durant, but I think they fall a little bit to the wayside. But there's just a handful of teams that have any shot of winning an NBA title. Going into this year, you said the same thing. There was 3 teams that could win it, and they were one of them was the team that won it. So it's such a not parity league. And the rich got richer is the team that should have won the NBA title this year got the best player in free agency to come. So you just got the best free agent to the best team and didn't lose anybody. It's disgusting. So if you're the Bulls, you are pretty much in hell because what do you do? Like, what do you do from here? I mean, you were nowhere close to the Cavaliers, and the Cavaliers won the title. You're nowhere close to them. You can't add the big name free agents because you didn't have the money and you didn't have the clout to be able to add the big name free agents like Kevin Durant or LeBron James. Instead, you had Rajon Rondo and Dwayne Wade. They're just not going to get it done. You're just not going to compete for this title. Maybe if you had a Tibbs who could just add that extra level of grind it out, but honestly, no. They're just all they're doing is going to their salary floor and trying to fill butts in the seats. So I just don't know what else to do. It's I just don't know how they get out of this unless they somehow just fall flat on their face and get the number 1 pick and get some superstar in the draft. But on a brighter note, one last thing I want to mention is the summer league for the NBA has begun. The Bulls just won their 2nd game. They're 2-0 now. And they were led by Cristiano Felicio, who was a very bright spot for the Bulls last year. He scored 17 points, grabbed 10 rebounds against the Sixers, and looked really good. I think he's got a lot of ability. I mean, is he going to be a superstar in this league? No, but he is like kind of like a young Taj. What Taj was when he wasn't overpaid and old. I like the kid, and I hope that he has a long future with the Bulls. And that's really all I have to say about the Bulls. I mean, it's a frustrating situation. I'd like to have my buddies from Bow Podcast come on, and that's BAWL Podcast. Chris and Big Dave. It would be nice to have them on soon to talk about what they think. And if you're up for it, go to their podcast and check it out because I know they just did a new episode, and they talked about the Bulls and their off-season work. So definitely go check them out and get their perspective because they are much more NBA knowledgeable than I. But I would like to move on to the Blackhawks. And again, this is going to be a very limited thing because there's not been much room or not much going on, but we've talked about all the big points. But The Hawks went out and signed veteran forward Jordin Who. Why? 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 Why did they sign Jordin Who? He's not good. He's old. Why? Couldn't have found anybody else. There was nobody else out there that you could have gotten. You got Jordin Who. I just hope he doesn't make the team. He's not good. I don't know. I'm so frustrated. What does Jordin Who bring to this team? What does he bring to this team? I don't know. He's not good. He's got no talent. I mean, you guys is better than me, but I'm fat and 40 almost. So I don't know. I generally say I trust the Blackhawks organization and I trust Bowman, but this is just a head scratcher. And I know a lot of the moves are head scratchers as well, but you can at least sort of see, oh, well, I needed to get rid of that guy to get rid of salary cap space, so I could do this and get under the cap. Those things I get, even if I don't like them or agree with them. I get what they were trying to do, but this Jordin Who move, I just don't get it. I really don't. And once the season starts, I dare you to say I was wrong. If I am, please play this back. Play this actual clip back. Sean, you're an idiot. Jordin Who is awesome, and he's totally making the whatever line he's playing on that much better, which is going to make the Blackhawks win another Stanley Cup because you're stupid and don't know anything. Please play that clip back to me. I want that opportunity, but it's not going to happen. You're just going to have to delete that and never use it again because Jordin Who is awful. But the Blackhawks are probably done with moves for the most part. They've got pretty much a full roster and very little cap space left, which they'll probably, if I have to guess, try to save it for the trade deadline to see if they can add a piece, because you always need to add a piece if you're a team that's trying to make a Stanley Cup run. And it's not too many teams that win a Stanley Cup that don't make some sort of move at the deadline. And the Blackhawks want to be able to have the cap flexibility to be able to do that. So they've got a couple $1 million left, and I expect them to try to keep that in their back pocket if possible. And the rest of the roster is going to be filled up with young players from Rockford. So we'll see. And once we get closer to the training camp and such, we'll start breaking down who it is and who we think the roster will be, and discuss that a little more. And that's about it. So we are going to wrap up the show by talking baseball, because it is All-Star break, the home run derby tonight. But we're going to talk about the Cubs and the Sox. And let me get up my notes. The Chicago Cubs are in a freaking awful tailspin. It is bad, and as a fan, it's so frustrating to watch. So frustrating. It makes you think, can this team ever win like 3 games in a row ever again? You really feel like this is doom and gloom right now. But luckily, I have quit being that fan. I've stopped. Last year, or the 37 years before that, I would have been ready to jump off a bridge watching this Cubs team collapse like this. But this year I'm not. This year I'm trusting that Jed and Theo know what they're doing. I'm trusting that this is a really long season and you're going to go through ebbs and flows. I'm going to trust in the players and the system that started off at a championship pace. And it's even funny is I saw a reporter asked John Lackey the other day a question. He said, what would you say to the average fan that, what was it? It was something like, what would you say to the average fan that thinks that the Cubs are not going to make the playoffs or not a championship caliber team or whatever it was? And he said, I'll just tell them that they're an average fan. And it's true. It's if you're a really great fan, you know that this is a 162 game season, and the only reason that this feels so disastrous is because we have such high expectations right now. The whole world is crowned the Cubs as the World Series champions, and we swallowed it hook, line, and sinker. This is a really good team. It's a 162 game season, and here's what I'm going to show you is I'm going to go back to the World Series teams. The last few World Series teams, and I'm going to talk about their worst month of the season. Last year, the Kansas City Royals, their worst month of the season was September. September, they were 11-17. 11-17. Okay? The 2014 Giants, June was their worst month. They were 10-16. The 2013 Red Sox, May was their worst month, and they were 15-15. The 2012 Giants, July was their worst month. They were 12-12. 2011 Cardinals, June, 11-15. 2010 Giants, August, 13-15. 2009 Yankees, April, 12-10. The 08 Phillies, June, 12-14. 07 Red Sox, June, 13-14. 2005 White Sox, August, 12-16. 04 Red Sox, June, 11-14, etc., etc. I can keep going, but what I want to tell you is, so you saw those. For the most part, they were all 500 records or under 500 records for their worst month. Right now, the Chicago Cubs, their worst month so far is June, which they were 16-12. 4 games above 500. They were 4 games above 500, and that was their worst month. If, that's a big if, they can keep that as their worst month, they're absolutely going to run away with this division, and they're going to charge into the playoffs. But I just want to give a few statistics. Is if we're looking at the Cubs in the first half of the season, not to the All-Star break, but the actual first half of the season, so it was a few days ago. 81 games into the season, the Cubs were 51-30 in the first half, a 63% winning percentage, which is pretty darn good. But so far in the second half of the season, they've started off 2-5. 2-5. And luckily we're in the All-Star break, because this is really a time that this team needs this. They've just been on a terrible slide. And luckily when they started off the season, is they worked so hard to get that huge cushion in that NL Central. And they still have a 7-game lead on the St. Louis Cardinals, who are in second place. But it's not going to be an easy start to the post All-Star break. Is they come right out of it. 3 games versus Texas at home, then 3 versus the Mets at home, 3 at the Brewers, 2 at the White Sox, 2 at home versus the White Sox, and then they wrap up the month of July with 3 games against Seattle. So realistically, this is like a giant homestand for the Cubs, because it's 3 Texas at home, 3 Mets at home. They play 3 in Milwaukee, which, although they've not played great against Milwaukee this season, Milwaukee is kind of like a home game for them, because so many Chicago Cub fans turn up because it's so close. It's so close. The tickets are so easy to get, especially since they're not a good team this year. It's so close. It's a nice park, easy parking. It's like an hour and a half away. Tons of Cubs fans will be there, especially the Cubs fans that live north of the city when it's not even an hour and a half. Then they play 2 at U.S. Cellular Field, which is kind of like a home game almost. I bet you'll have more Cubs fans there than White Sox, and that's not a knock. It's just, I think that's what happened. Then 2 against the White Sox at Wrigley Field, and then 3 versus Seattle at home. So it's really, they wrap up the month of July at home. They're really going to have to take advantage of this. They can't come up slumping. And I know the Mets are a good team, the Rangers are a good team, The White Sox are a good team. They play good teams, but these are home games for the most part. You've got to take advantage of those. You've got to take advantage. You've got to win those ball games. And here's part of the problem. This is the last 30 days. Not the last 30 games, the last 30 days. This is the five-man rotation for the Cubs. Jake Arrieta, in 6 games started, is 3-3. 3-3. 3 losses in his last 6 games for Jake Arrieta, with a 4.72 ERA, 17 walks, 34 strikeouts, a 1.4 WHIP, and give up 4 home runs. A 1.4 WHIP and a 4.72 ERA. That's not the Jake Arrieta that we've come to know. This Jake Arrieta he's not striking out the same number of guys. Guys are making contact. He just doesn't look dominant out there. He looks tired. And I don't know if it's that he pitched so many games last year, but he started off really well at the beginning of this year. So I just don't know what you chalk this up to. I don't know if there's like a nagging injury and it's causing him weirdness in his mechanics. Because if you're a pitcher, any little thing that you have nagging can cause, like let's say you have a toe injury. When you go to, if it's on your plant foot, when you go to plant, you're not going to plant the same way. It's going to cause a shift in your mechanics. You're going to have the ball come out differently. If you have a strain in your shoulder, it's going to cause you to move your arm a little differently. So there's a lot of things that could be wrong, and I hope that it's not that the other teams have figured him out. I really hope not. I hope it's more along the lines of he just needs some rest to get back to that. But Arrieta doesn't look like the same guy. Lester started out the season great. In his last 6 games, he's 2-1 with a 5.34 ERA, a 1.38 whip, and gave up 9 home runs. And I'm going to backtrack because you may not all know what whip is. Whip is a walks plus hits per innings pitched. So they figure out how many walks you've given up, add the number of hits you've given up, and then divide it by the number of innings you pitched. So you really don't want to have that be a high number. I mean, ideally you want that less than 1, but one is a good whip, and 1.4 and 1.38 for Arrieta and Lester respectively, not good. And the home run numbers have just been atrocious. You can't beat John Lester in giving up that many home runs. Then move to John Lackey, who might be the worst pitcher on the Cubs rotation right now. His last 6 games, 0-3 with a 6.23 ERA, 1.53 whip, and has given up 7 home runs. He just looks awful out there when you watch him. He doesn't look like the same guy. He's getting pissy with his teammates. He's not hitting his pitches. I mean, he's got the most strikeouts over the last 6 games, or their last 6 games out of anybody in the Cubs. But he's also walked the most number of guys. He's walking, he's given up hits. Hamill suddenly has already turned into the second half Jason Hamill in the first half. His last 5 games started. So in the last 30 days, he started 5 games. He's 0-3 with a 6.18 ERA, a 1.19 whip, and 8 home runs given up. Again, doesn't look great. The only player that looks halfway decent on this rotation right now is Kyle Hendricks. In his last 5 games, he's 3-1 with a 1.78 ERA, 29 strikeouts, a 1.25 whip, and 4 home runs. He looks good out there. He's been the saving grace for the Cubs. But they did, because they had that stretch of 24 games in a row, we talked about this last time, is they sent Adam Warren down to the AAA to stretch out a little bit, and so he could do a spot start. And he looked fantastic. He had a spot start versus the Reds, and granted it's the Reds, but he went 5 innings pitched, 3 hits, 1 earned run, no walks, 6 strikeouts, and gave up 1 home run. The Cubs ultimately lost that game because Trevor Cahill just looked like garbage, but Adam Warren looked great. And don't be surprised if Hamill and Lackey just can't get it done, they don't start moving Adam Warren in there and giving people spot days off and letting him pitch because he's looked good, and those guys just clearly need a break. But on that same window is there was a time period where the Cubs pitching was absolutely great, and they were putting guys on base and they were driving them home and scoring a ton of runs, and it was all just absolutely perfect. What you want to do if you're a Major League Baseball team is score a lot of runs. Don't let the other team score very many runs. You win a lot of ball games. Cubs went through this stretch where they couldn't score any runs at all, and the pitching was still great. But there was a struggle because they weren't scoring runs. Right now, they're in that weird flow again where the pitching is awful. Pitching is bad. Starting pitching's bad. The bullpen's bad. But you have guys that are hitting the ball. I mean, not a lot of guys are hitting the ball, but there's a good number of guys hitting the ball. Over the last 30 days, Rizzo is just cleaning everybody's clock. He's batting almost 400. He's at 379, and he's got 39 hits, 11 doubles, triple, 8 home runs, 20 RBIs, and with an OPS of 1.209. So he's just murdering the ball. He's not just getting singles. He's murdering the balls. Like, half of his hits are multi-base hits. Actually, 20 more than half of his hits in the last 30 days are multi-base hits. He's got 11 doubles, a triple, and 8 home runs. Contreras has come up and just been an absolute spark at that catching position. He's batting .305 in the last 30 days with a .948 OPS and 5 home runs. Chris Bryant, he's batting .302 with a 1.173 OPS, 29 hits, 11 of those are home runs. So more than a third of his hits are home runs in this last 30 days, and 8 of them are doubles. So it's 19 out of 29 are multi-base hits. Albert Almora, 286 with a 794 OPS with 2 home runs. Jason Hayward over the last 30 days. Told you guys, be patient with him. He will turn it around. Over the last 30 days, batting .282 with a 749 OPS. He's not hitting the home runs, but he's got 31 hits. 7 of them are doubles. He's got 7 RBIs in there. And moving him down in the order has been a big payoff. Baez, 281 with an 843 OPS, 5 home runs, and 15 RBIs. Addison Russell, 255 with an 867 OPS. So he's got 25 hits, and 11 of them are multiple base hits, including 7 home runs. You're starting to see that power in Addison Russell that Joe Madden and Chris Bryant talked about before the season started. Is Addison Russell's, he's getting much more comfortable there, and he's not bringing the average to where it needs to be, but he's driving the ball hard, and he's got some pop in that bat. And the most disappointing, though, is the guy who started out the best, is Ben Zobrist. He's batting the last 30 days, 209 with a 698 OPS. He's got 5 home runs and 11 RBIs, but he's been bad. So you're not seeing... so you're seeing guys that are starting to hit the ball and drive it out of the park and really score some runs. But as you saw, the starting pitching has been so bad that they're not in these games. They've lost 3 consecutive series to Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, and the Mets. You shouldn't lose to Cincinnati. The Mets are a good team. We shouldn't get a 4-game sweep out of them. Pittsburgh is a good team, but you shouldn't be losing to them at all. And not only have they lost 3 consecutive series, they've lost 6 of their last 8 series. If you look at the Cubs' first quarter of the season, the first whole, so I went 40 games in the first quarter and 41 in the second quarter because it's just doesn't work out that have even numbers. But in the first quarter of the season, they were 29-11, 73% win percentage. The second quarter of the season, they're at 22-19. They're a 54% team. They're just a little over 500. So as you can see, the Cubs are really in a struggle right now, and they're going to get better. You saw the World Series champions, and none of them just dominated through the whole season. It's a long season. The Cubs are in the third quarter right now, and hopefully that last win was a tough, good win over the Pirates to end going into the All-Star break, and hopefully this time off will help everybody. I know the Cubs have a lot of players playing in the All-Star game, but hopefully having the day off today and then having the 2 days off after the game before starting against Texas at home, they can really get the rest they need, and they can at least get to start at home after the break. But realistically, is the trade deadline's at the end of the month, and the Cubs need to make moves. They absolutely need to make moves. The starting pitching should be good enough to win, and if not, you have Adam Warren and Travis Wood, who are definitely guys that you can put in there to start if need be. And once you go to the playoffs anyway, you can cut it down to a 4-man rotation and work it that way. So you've got depth at the starting pitching. It's just your bull, they're just not pitching well all at the same time. You've got 5 guys, 4 of the 5 guys are just not pitching well all at the same time. Hendricks has been pretty reliable the whole season, pretty steady, which is great news that your number 5 starter is pitching so well. But they need to get a better bullpen. Rondon is a good closer, but you need a right-handed guy and a left-handed guy to set him up. And I don't know what they have. If you're the Cubs bullpen, who do you trust? Warren and Wood have been good in spots, but they've also gotten blown up. But they're more starter guys. They're like your long relievers. Trevor Cahill has just been up and down, up and down. C.J. Edwards or Carl Edwards, whatever he goes by now, he's young. He's been up and down as well. Pedro Strop, up and down. He's like the Mitch Williams of this team. So you don't have a lot that you can trust, and I know there's going to be a ton of teams that are going out there to help or to get help in the bullpen. And the Cubs at least have ammunition to be able to do it. They've got a stacked minor league team, but they're going to have to do it, and they're going to have to figure it out. And the question is, do they mortgage the future to win this year, or do they play the long game, or do they do some sort of hybrid? So they keep everybody and just cross their fingers that their bullpen is enough to hold, or do they go out there and trade Schwarber and trade Gleyber Torres to get stud righty and a stud lefty to go out there and shut everybody down? I really think that they're going to find some sort of happy medium. They've got a lot of depth in the minor leagues that's sort of stuck. You've got players that are stuck behind young players that are already on the major league roster, like Gleyber Torres. Where is he going to go? Is you have Addison Russell, and you've got Baez, and you've got Bryant, all as your infield. Where do you put Gleyber Torres if he comes up? They're really, excited about him. He's their top prospect. Your outfield, you've got Soler, you've got Fowler, you've got Hayward, you've got Schwarber. Is when you've got some of the outfielders coming up, where do they go? Catching prospects. Wilson Contreras is young. Where do you go? They don't have a lot of pitching depth. So the Cubs have a lot of depth that's sort of stuck behind young players already that they can move, and they're not going to miss them per se. They'll just have to get younger still. So we'll see where they go. But I really think it's going to be some sort of happy medium where they're going to give up some of the mid-level depth that they have in the minors and they're not going to get a stud, but they're going to get somebody that's better than what they have now, or at least somebody that gives them more options once they expand the roster going into the later part of the season. And then finally, I'm going to talk about the White Sox, and I don't have a lot to say about them. Again, I just really haven't watched a lot of White Sox games. I've been I've had a lot on my plate here. But they've come out. They were in that same awful slump that the Cubs are in right now, and everyone thought they're done for. They can't do it. But two things for them is, one, unfortunately, is they had a team like the Indians who just turned it on and looked like world beaters out there that caught up to them and surpassed them and blew that lead out. But two is that the AL, I think, is much more wide open. And if the White Sox can make it to the playoffs, there's a lot that they can do. And in the last 30 days, you've got a lot of White Sox hitting the ball. Cabrera, Abreu, B.J. Shuck, Tim Anderson, Brett Lawrie, Adam Eaton, all batting 280 or higher. That's really good. It's a lot of guys batting 280 or higher. And then you've got two all-star pitchers, Sale and Quintana. Quintana got added to the all-star game, and Sale got the start for the all-star game, or is getting the start tomorrow. And they're only a half game out of second place in the division, but Cleveland is sort of running away with it. And they're only 4.5 games out of the wild card, which is definitely within striking distance. They've got the better part of a half a season left, where they have 81 games, 7. They're like 75 more games left this season, and you've only got to gain 4.5. Definitely doable, especially when you've beat the butts of the two teams that are ahead of you in the wild card, Toronto and Boston. But if you look at Fangraphs every single day does simulations to figure out what are the odds that your team will make win the division, make the playoffs, win the World Series, win the division series, blah, blah, blah. And right now, the White Sox have a 9% chance of making the playoffs, which is not great, but it's not terrible. They're still in this, and they can still move that up. And they've got a 0.4% chance to win the World Series, so less than a 0.5% chance. In contrast, the Chicago Cubs, same site, same metrics, same everything. They're at a 98% that they will make the playoffs and a 17% that they'll win the World Series. By far and away, the highest out of anybody's percentages. So the White Sox really have turned things around. They're not clobbering everybody there, but they're playing decent baseball. They've moved. If they can stay this consistent, you're going to watch some of the other teams sort of fall back while the White Sox separate themselves. And all they have to do is wait for the Indians to go on this inevitable slump of their own. And either they come back and catch up to them that way, or catch up to Toronto and Boston, because I don't believe in Toronto. Boston's a good team, but I don't believe in Toronto, and I don't believe in Detroit. Those are two teams that are ahead of you. So the White Sox really do have a fighting chance, and hopefully the White Sox All-Star Game break will do them worlds of good too. That's really going to wrap it up for this episode of the show. Not a lot of questions. Most people are just yelling at me about the Buddy Ryan thing. If you have a question or comment or anything for the show, please feel free to reach out to us. If you're on Twitter, we're at Swerski Sports. That's SWERSKI Sports. Facebook.com/Swerski Sports. SwerskiSports.com is the Facebook or the website, and it has got all the contact information. It's an email address, blah, blah, blah. And it's a By the Fan for the Fan show. So if you have a comment, we will talk about it. If you have a question, we'll talk about it. If you just want to yell that my opinions stink, go ahead. We'll talk about that too. If you want to be on the show to talk about your opinions or yell at me, then more than willing to let you on. Just let me know. And thank you guys so much for listening. Please make sure that you're subscribing however you're listening, whether it's iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, whatever. Please make sure you subscribe. And until next time, bear down.
Cubs win! What a lucky break! The good Lord wants the Cubs to win!
We thank Ditka and God for all they have provided.
Cubs win! Cubs win! Cubs win!
Oh, I don't want her. You can have her. She's a Packer fan. She can't fit in my van.
And she looks like number New Yorkers. Smoking crack is not legal on planes.
Bears 31 to -7.
The Bears.
Oh, when the Bears go bearing down.